blessings, curses, and the way of love. I speak to you in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Amen.
Please be seated. A few years ago, the New York Times ran a tribute piece called The Lessons of Sister Dolores. The opening line went something like this. The first lesson that girls at this school learned is that no good can come from crossing Sister Dolores. Other gems included how this nun once jumped out of her moving car, confiscated the student's beer, emptied it in the gutter, explained that as a certified alcohol counselor, she could have the girl arrested, then waited while the shell-shocked child called her parents to report herself. Another story highlights the school's annual prom tradition of students bringing their dates to meet Sister Dolores, where she went one by one, staring deeply into each young man's eyes in total silence. Exactly. Imagine during that experience before embarking on prom night. To her credit, as the school's principal, which this article commemorates, she was to empower young women to fiery confidence and moral compassion, based out of her firm belief that the Beatitudes were the code for living in the world well. She often said, the Beatitudes are the keys to the kingdom because they center on love. Sister Dolores drew heavily on the late and legendary social activist and founder of the Catholic worker movement, Dorothy Day, who left us with this spiritual call to action and insight, which she wrote. The greatest challenge of the day is how to bring about a revolution of the heart. Now, full disclosure, my interest in this news article was also personal because Sister Dolores was my wife's first spiritual director when we lived in New York City and attended her church, St. Francis Xavier in Brooklyn, where 3 of my 5 kids actually were baptized. She and my wife would spend many days commiserating over shared autoimmune diseases and surgeries. Often they would meet at the convent and share their latest pain management strategies in between telling jokes. Sister Dolores strikes this wonderful balance between deep spiritual gravitas and hilarious urban wit. She's one of those rare people that we meet who can be nobody else besides themselves. We all know at least one person like this in our lives, I'm sure, who reminds us that Christ doesn't call for someone else when calling our name, but that Christ calls us as we are, and calls us to grow into his likeness. And then he calls us into the revolution of the heart that we encounter in all of today's scripture readings. And what powerful readings we have before us this morning. The opening hymn of the Psalter sets the tone for today's words by showing us 2 ways of living: the way of the righteous and the way of the wicked. The psalm tells us of the happiness that comes to those who find their delight and purpose in God. That is, those who are like trees planted by streams of living water that bear fruit beyond their wildest imaginations. But what a stark contrast to the last part of the psalm that describes to us the plight of the wicked. That is, those who have voluntarily cut themselves off from the streams of living water and are like the chaff which the wind blows away. In other words, awake are those who walk in the mystery of God, and asleep are those who accept the anesthesia of life on the plane of the status quo. The prophet Jeremiah echoes these same things. Those who are blessed and those who are cursed. He writes this: "Blessed are those who put their trust in the Lord. They shall be like a tree planted by water, sending out its roots by the stream. It does not cease to bear fruit." He contrasts that with the following: "Cursed are those who trust in mere mortals, whose hearts turn away from the Lord. They shall be like a shrub in the desert, and shall not see when relief comes." So Jeremiah poses to us this morning the question: how do you want to live? Do you want to bear fruit, or are you content to die in the desert? And then we have today's gospel, which continues in this dialectic, containing this either-or language of blessings and woes, with a bit of a twist. As Luke tells the story, Jesus has just spent the night alone on a mountaintop in prayerful discernment before he chooses who will be his disciples. As morning dawns, he and the newly called 12 descend from the mountain to find a vast crowd waiting for them. The multitudes have come from everywhere, seeking help in Jesus in his element, with power literally pouring off his garments, we're told, heals them all. Then, standing on a level place, as Luke says, with the crowd, he tells his would-be disciples what discipleship actually looks like. And here is what he says on their first day of disciple orientation. "Blessed are you who are poor, hungry, sad, and expendable. Woe to you who are rich, full, happy, and popular." Yep, that's the fabulous good news of the gospel and the kingdom of God. A world literally turned upside down. An economy of blessing that sounds absolutely ludicrous. A reordering of priority and privilege that the church will find awkward and even offensive for centuries to come. So I'll be honest, I was a little unsure of what to do with this stinging lectionary gospel this morning. And what I was tempted to do, and what we're all sort of probably tempted to do, of course, is edit Jesus' words to make ourselves feel better. Amen? As in, he didn't really mean poor, did he? Homeless poor? Slum poor? Or hungry as in literally hungry? Starving for bread? Also, he couldn't possibly have meant sad. Sad people as in people drowning in grief and despair. People who weep aloud in ways respectable people never do in public. Wouldn't it be cruel to call them blessed? And surely he wasn't referring to literal expendability. To those unlikable, unpopular, unimportant people, no one can blame us for avoiding. Obviously, Jesus was exaggerating, speaking figuratively, metaphorically, kidding, right? I mean, come on. There must be some way that we can wiggle out of the woes column and get ourselves into the blessed column, right? Wrong. Unlike Matthew, whose counterpart today's gospel, known as the more popular Sermon on the Mount, Matthew, who spiritualizes the Beatitudes and softens them a bit by writing poor in spirit instead of poor, and those who hunger and thirst for righteousness instead of plain old hungry. Luke keeps Jesus' sermon on the plain, as it's known. He keeps it raw, terse, and close to the bone. There's no way around it. As far as Luke's Jesus is concerned, God's favor does not rest on the well-fed, the well-off, or the well-liked. It rests on those who have absolutely nothing to fall back on but God alone. No credit line, no nest egg, no fan base, no immunity, nothing. If you want to know where God's heart is, Luke insists, look to the world's most reviled, wretched, starving, shamed, desperate, and grieving people. They are the fortunate ones. They are the blessed ones on whom God's promise of more and better rests. So, to bring this into our own immediate geographical and cultural context for a minute, I was really struck by the third blessing in today's gospel. Blessed are you who weep now, for you will laugh. It's precisely this blessed are those who weep and grieve that's become so real over the past few days, where there have been a lot of people weeping. This past week, as we tried to make sense of Valentine's Day forever being linked to the horrific school shooting in Parkland just 1 year ago. And as I rang the church bells 17 times at 2:22 p.m. on Thursday, and as our youth director read in between the tolling of the bells each name of the victims from the balcony just up there in the garden of the church, I asked myself if I really believed in this beatitude. If I really believe that God's blessing on those who weep now will one day be turned into laughter and joy. Being out in the community this past week, I can attest to the fact that grief is still real, and grief is still very, very raw. So when I stood in the dark, empty choir loft on Thursday, I drew on Sister Dolores' words like I draw in air to breathe. The Beatitudes are the code for living in this world well, she says. The Beatitudes are keys to the kingdom. And then Dorothy Day's prophetic call came upon me. The greatest challenge of our day is how to bring about a revolution of the heart. In other words, the only way to push through this collective magnitude of grief, to see what might lie on the other side, could be nothing other than God's mystical and enduring power of love, meeting them and leading them every second of every day. Because how are we alone able to be revolutionary hearts in the face of the senseless murder of kids at schools, in a profoundly unjust system? This tragedy is ongoing. Just since Thursday, there have been 2 shootings in Chicago and Texas, killing 10 people. Today's Beatitudes may focus on social conditions, but these social conditions, political conditions, economic conditions, cannot be righted without revolutionary hearts. Sister Dolores often loved to quote from Dorothy Day's autobiography, The Long Loneliness. And it is this line I was reminded of this past week. Day writes this: "We have all known the great loneliness, and we have learned that the only solution is love, and that love comes in community." So, here we are today. Here for the very specific reason to encounter Christ in the Eucharist and in each other together. As revolutionary hearts, we're here to sync our heart to the heartbeat of God as we seek to embody the Beatitudes, those keys to the kingdom and the here and now. But being revolutionary hearts is not easy. Being poor and hungry and stricken by grief can be debilitating. But if we read just past today's gospel, we find these gems of spiritual insight. Jesus says, "If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you?" Even sinners do that. And love your enemies. Do good, expecting nothing in return. I'm not going to lie to you here. Living in the kingdom of God is incredibly tough work. But the same old alternatives are literally killing us and dividing us over and over again. In a beautiful reflection on Jesus' upside-down kingdom present in today's gospel, Frederick Buechner writes this: "The world says, mind your own business. And Jesus says, there is no such thing as your own business. The world says, follow the wisest course and be a success. And Jesus says, follow me and be crucified. The world says, drive carefully. The life you save may be your own. And Jesus says, whoever would save his life will lose it. And whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. The world says law and order. And Jesus says love. The world says get, and Jesus says give. In terms of the world's sanity, Jesus is crazy as a coot. And anybody who thinks he can follow him without being a little crazy too is laboring less under a cross than under a delusion. So if we look closely at this morning's gospel, the Sermon on the Plain is not prescriptive. In fact, nowhere in this litany of blessings and woes does Jesus tell his listeners how to behave. The sermon is actually not advice at all. It's not even judgment. It is simply the truth about the way things work, pronounced by someone who loves everyone. So what do we do with ourselves? Most of us who find ourselves in the woes column, wanting to be in the blessed column, but aren't so sure we can handle its realities. What's the way out of these binaries? How do we get out of the blessing or the curse in a world that's more nuanced than that? In other words, as a good Anglican Episcopalian, I am demanding a third way. What is the third way, and how do we live it? Well, as Sister Dolores says over and over again, as Dorothy Day wrote over and over again, as the Gospels reveal God's identity repeatedly, and as our very own presiding bishop says every chance he gets, we are made for love. We are made for love. Because love bridges the chasms between the blessings and the woes, between the blessings and the curses, between a fruit-bearing tree and a shrub in the desert. I really believe if we commit ourselves to the life-giving way of love that Jesus shows us, that as the Psalter says this morning, streams of living water will gush out of us and consecrate our world. And the woes will join the blessed. And the lion and the lamb will lie down together. Amen.
Amen.